What's going on? Welcome back to Off the Schneid. Today we're going to take a look at the Kansas City Chiefs, talk about their draft needs heading into the 2022 NFL draft that's in about 2 weeks. Teams are, for the most part, wrapping up free agency. Trades are trickling in and signings are happening here and there. But until the end of the draft, I don't think we'll see too much happening. It's in about 2 weeks' time, like I said. Look out for my mock draft that will be out in about a week or so. I'm looking at having it out on the 22nd. And we'll see what this team does because they have 2 first-round picks, which probably hasn't happened for the Chiefs, and I don't know when, to be honest with you, a long time ago. So obviously we'll talk about that trade with the Dolphins. I didn't expect it, to be honest, at all. I think if you told me that, 10 minutes before it happened, I think if you told me that Tyreek Hill was going to get traded, I would not have believed you. I was pretty surprised, and it happened very, very, very quickly. So they got a good return for him, that's for sure. And they're gonna, they're not going to be able to replace him because there is no real replacing Tyreek Hill, the things that he can do, and we'll see what he does with the Dolphins. But I think that they have some big plans for the type of things that they're going to have him do. But I think that this machine can roll on with the amount of draft capital that they have in this year's draft. They have 4 picks inside the top 62, 5 picks inside the top 100. We'll give them 6, 103, right? So that's a lot of quality depth there, and they can absolutely, if they really want to move up, they can for sure. We'll see how it goes, and I'm going to talk through it as we get there. You can obviously see the team needs, which is extremely focused towards the defensive side of the ball for good reason, and we'll get there. But I think that that's where they're going to have to focus their premium picks is on the defensive side of the ball and give this team, a chance. I shouldn't say a chance. They're one of the best teams in the NFL, but get back to the Super Bowl and win another Super Bowl, because that's obviously the ultimate goal, especially for a team like this that's going to be there close, around winning Super Bowls, going to AFC championships, things like that, every single year, as long as Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid are with this team. So let's kick it off at the quarterback position. We got Patrick Mahomes, who's obviously one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. A lot of people think he is the best. Go ahead and argue that. It is what it is. Chad Henne, I think, came back on a 1-year deal, and you got to replace him. You really got to replace him. And there's a lot of quality, backup quarterbacks in this draft. I think everybody's been, ad nauseum. We've been talking about quarterbacks and prospects and things like that. There's not a ton of extremely jump off the page quarterbacks that are first overall. There won't even be a quarterback drafted in the top 3, and that's almost a sure thing. We'll see. But there's a lot of quality depth guys, though. A guy like Jack Cohn, maybe, I mentioned him for a few teams as a backup quarterback. He might be my favorite, just clear-cut backup quarterback. You could groom, some franchises, some teams could groom him to potentially be their starter of the future, but I think that he's a guy that's going to be 100% a career backup without question in the NFL starting this season. So I think that he's a guy that they could look at maybe in the 4th round, something like that. So it's not going to cost you a lot, and I think it would go a long way. And you could have him there with Chad Henne this season and then have him take over as the backup next year and see what happens from there. Let's move over to the running back position. Obviously, Ronald Jones comes in. I'm a big believer in Rojo personally. I really do like what he can do. Obviously he has his deficiencies as a bit of a pass catcher at times, pass coverage at times as well. But, I think some of those things he can learn. He is still very young, and we'll see how he fits in this offense as opposed to the Buccaneers, where he did have success with the Buccaneers. He just kind of got replaced, basically. When Leonard Fournette was there, he was almost 1,000-yard rusher 2 years ago. So, I think he can definitely get the job done in the NFL, and this is going to be a bit of a timeshare, obviously, with Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I do not think that they pick up his 5th-year option. I think that they regret picking him there. I supported it at the time. Looking back now, I don't know why I did, because it just didn't make sense. In my opinion, Clyde Edwards-Helaire is the same as Devin Singletary. You could put Devin Singletary in this offense and he'd be exactly the same, I think. So there you go. That's that. They're in an okay spot. They might look to draft a running back somewhere. I would be honestly, I would be okay with that. They just have so many picks that they could do that and get away with it, without, hurting their draft grade. No picks between 135 and 235 almost, right? Between the 4th and 7th round there. So, they have a lot of quality picks and then a bunch of dart throws that, you can see what happens with some of those guys, and you just take who you like. Michael Burton, fullback for this team, he's been around on this team a long time and he can do a lot of good things. He does, pop off a little bit here and there. He'll add a touchdown here and there, add a big catch here and there sort of thing. So he's been around and knows the offense for a while. Move over to the tight end position. Travis Kelce, in my opinion, is still the best tight end in the NFL. He's going to be an almost even bigger part of this offense without Tyreek Hill. We'll see what they do in the draft as far as playmakers are concerned, and I'll get there when I talk about the wide receivers. But Travis Kelce is still an absolute beast, and doesn't really show too many signs of slowing down, and might take another step forward. You might see a 1,500-yard tight end this year, and that's Travis Kelce, obviously. Blake Bell is a quality backup in my opinion. Noah Gray, I'm not a huge believer of. There's obviously a ton of tight ends on this roster right now. Jody Fortson has played for this team, and we'll see how this kind of all shakes out. But obviously it's Travis Kelce and then everyone else, and it's probably Blake Bell as the backup, and then whoever else makes the roster. But they're not going to see the field a ton as long as Travis Kelce is healthy, and fingers crossed he stays healthy, because honestly the NFL is better with a guy like that on the field. The NFL in general, it's just funner to watch, obviously. We'll move to the offensive line. This was a completely overhauled unit after the Super Bowl, which is pretty fair. You can see, parallels with the Cincinnati Bengals from what happened with them in the Super Bowl when they lost, revamped their entire offensive line this past offseason. Same thing with the Chiefs 2 years ago. So Creed Humphrey was fantastic for this team. Absolutely phenomenal pick. Joe Thuney was a good pickup. They franchise tag Orlando Brown. We'll see if they're able to bring him back. Trey Smith was a super pleasant surprise from the 6th round, and then Lucas Niang, who sat out the COVID year, came back and had a good season. There is some issues behind those guys depth-wise. Andrew Wiley was another pleasant surprise. Prince Tega, he's okay as a swing guy. Nick Algretti, another 7th round pick, pleasant surprise. So they're doing well developing these guys, but I think they could definitely add, at the very least, kind of a swing tackle that you can feel super confident with. And then, maybe Prince Tega and Andrew Wiley can be those swing interior guard guys. But that's what I look for if I am drafting offensive line, and I do think this team needs to. You can address it in the 2nd or 3rd round and just get yourself a swing tackle. He's not a guy that has to start at all this year, as long as everybody's healthy, which you do plan for. But you need to have that depth just in case, especially for this roster like this that's going to the playoffs and gonna has Super Bowl aspirations. Let's move over to the wide receiver position, and this is a spot where I've been saying this a lot, and it would be huge fantasy wise, things like that, and I know that they like this guy, but if they stay at 29 and 30, I'm really not sure if I would be happy if the Chiefs moved up in the draft and spent some draft capital to draft this guy. But I really would like George Pickens to come to the the Kansas City Chiefs. I do think that they're lacking, that true alpha X wide receiver now that Tyreek Hill's obviously gone to the Dolphins there. They have Juju, who is, we know what Juju is, and we know he's a slot receiver. That's okay. He's a phenomenal one, so keep him there. Mecole Hardman and MVS are both those downfield stretcher guys. They just catch the ball over the shoulder type of thing. And they're fantastic for stretching the field, opening things up over the middle of the field for Juju and Kelce. But you need that possession, do it all alpha. I hate that word, but alpha X wide receiver. And I think George Pickens can be that guy. And I know there's that mutual interest. Obviously, you couldn't blame Pickens for wanting to come to this team, and they need a receiver like him. So that's who I see in the draft. Either way, I think high priority is going to be wide receiver. A lot of people are, saying they need to address defense, and I 100% agree. But, I also am in the train of thought for two reasons. They have a ton of picks. They have a ton of capital. They can get a playmaker on offense and still stack up this defense with all the picks that they have. But also, build on your strengths. That's what I say. If your defense is a weakness, it is what it is. You're not going to just snap your fingers and make it a top 10 defense, top 5 defense. It's not going to happen. But this offense is 100%, a top 5 offense without question. So build on that. You might as well build on a strength and then just keep the train running type of thing. So that's what I do. I go with a guy like George Pickens and round out my playmakers, and then I'm set basically. Cornell Powell's still there. They brought back Josh Gordon, sure. Doris Fountain, I know they don't mind him. Omar Bayless, Corey Coleman, former first round pick. There's all those other like support guys that you can have on your team, but I think they need that one true, number one wide receiver, and we'll see if it's Pickens, but I think they're going to draft somebody. So now let's move it over to the defensive side of the ball, where yes, I 100% agree. This is where they're going to have to focus their attention in the draft or in free agency, because there's still some names out there that I think can help this team, and I'll get there in a second. So let's start on the defensive line. Chris Jones, he did play some defensive end for this team. Obviously he can do well in that because he's a fantastic football player, but he's such an insane mismatch in the interior that I think that the only reason he played on the outside was out of an extreme necessity, because they just didn't have anybody else that can do it properly. Melvin Ingram, sure, but he plays a lot more of an outside linebacker type of a style. Frank Clark, he was, his best days, to be honest, are behind him, and they were in Seattle before he ever got here. He can still be okay, but I think that they have to address defensive end, hence why I have it on as a team need twice. I think that they absolutely have to address that and get a major difference maker that can keep Chris Jones on the inside. And then, Mike Dana, Frank Clark, those two guys, they combined for 7.5 sacks last year. That's not acceptable considering the way that this team plays on offense and the amount of shootouts that the Chiefs play in. There's all the other, the offense, the opposing offenses, they have to throw the ball more. It's just the style of play that they have. Similar with the Bengals. There's a lot of parallels between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Cincinnati Bengals. I'm a Bengals fan. Everyone that, if you watch this channel a lot, I'm a Bengals fan, and there's a lot of parallels there. You need to get after the quarterback, period. You just have to. And Chris Jones can't be your only guy. And he's being discounted because he's getting kicked to the outside out of necessity. Add a guy. I can't say it enough. Add a guy. They have a couple guys. Like I would pick, 29 or 30, wide receiver, doesn't matter. You pick back to back, and then defensive end 50, defensive end 62, corner, whatever it is. And there's some names in free agency that I'll get to in a second that I think this team could look at. Moving back, Willie Gay and Nick Bolton, I think are fantastic linebackers. They now will get the opportunity, I can only assume, to be, every down players, and I think that they will both excel. Those are fantastic players in my opinion. Jermaine Carter comes over from the Carolina Panthers. That was a good get, solid veteran guy who can get the job done. Elijah Lee is there as well. So they have they're fine at linebacker. I'm not addressing that. You have 2 second-round picks in Gay and Bolton. Let them play. Let them play, and there's no reason to think that they won't succeed, because everything that I've seen from watching the Chiefs, they're quality football players. So I'm happy there. We'll move it back to let's talk about the cornerbacks first. Charvarius Ward is gone. Probably not coming back. We'll see. Rashad Fenton is okay. L'Jarius Sneed was very, very good for this team, and that was a very, very good pick in the 4th round. That worked out phenomenally. I think that he can absolutely be, an every down player for this team. Fenton could be, again, another 6th-round pick, another pleasant surprise. DeAndre Baker is a former 1st-round pick who's kind of, had some off-field issues. I don't like to get into that stuff, as you know, but whatever. He's a former 1st-round pick. They have to, especially in this AFC West, especially in the AFC. They have to add some cornerback depth, and they need some help, again, especially because, we'll move to the safeties, they lost the Honey Badger, Tyrann Mathieu. That's going to hurt this defense more than anything. Absolutely, that's going to hurt this team a lot. Even a leader like Dirty Dan Sorensen, that's going to hurt this defense a lot. A lot of people are saying they need safety. Yeah, they could, but it's not as high of a priority for me as it is for what seems like a lot of other people. Bringing in Justin Reed, I'm not sure if people are forgetting that Justin Reed is a very, very good football player, but I think that was a phenomenal get. And then again, Juan Thornhill, another 2nd-round pick in 2019. You have to let him play. He has to be that guy. You have to give him the opportunity to fail. That's something I always say, about these picks when people talk about just replacing guys and, he didn't work out, he's a bust, whatever. You can't just give up and just say, he can't do it. You have to give them the opportunity to fail. And if they do, they do. Then you replace them. But I'm not sure that Juan Thornhill's got that opportunity to be the every down player that they hope that he's going to be this year. So we'll see. I think they could add a safety. It's just not as high on my list as other people. I think that, again, with the amount of picks that they have, sure, 3rd or 4th round pick, add a safety. I'm more than fine with that. Deion Bush is there as well as depth. Another thing that I think they can do, there is a lot of those kind of depth guys, and they might work out, long term, some of them. So for getting after the quarterback, couple guys that are still available. They have $14 million in cap space this year, so they have some room to add a guy or two. And there's a couple guys that could be difference makers that are out there right now, some solid vets. Tack McKinley, who just has never, kind of found his footing and never got going, but he's a former 1st-round pick. He's available. Jadeveon Clowney, obviously, people call him a bust, but he's really, really not. That's really unfair. Go look at his stat line. Jadeveon Clowney is a very good football player. It's a really unfair label to call him a bust. Carlos Dunlap, he's a fantastic player, and he'll be motivated on a team that's, playoff bound, going to be going for a Super Bowl, that sort of a thing. I like Carlos Dunlap, obviously, as a Bengals fan. And Justin Houston, another solid vet that can come in and make a difference for this team right now. And then at cornerback, there's, Trey Flowers, Joe Hayden, Mackenzie Alexander, Chris Harris, Kyle Fuller. There's all these guys at corner where they could, still draft a guy for sure, but bring in a quality vet. A guy like Chris Harris would be phenomenal on this team. So we'll see how it all shakes out, but I think they can look at free agency still after the draft, grab a guy or two, a pass rusher and a corner, draft a couple pass rushers and another corner and a safety, wide receiver, backup quarterback, all these kinds of positions, offensive line, and they're gonna just keep this machine rolling. With all of these picks, like I said, you're drafting difference makers right now that you can plug into your lineup and hopefully, improve, especially, like I said, on the defensive side of the football. So there you go. There's your breakdown for the Kansas City Chiefs heading into the 2022 NFL Draft. Let me know what you think in the comments, and we'll see you on the next video.